Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, we are going to be going over Lightning Blast Runemaster. So, thankfully, with a lot of new updates to the game in regards to Lightning Blast and some synergies it's gotten, we have been able to pull this build out of ancient territory, as the last time I played it was about 2 to 3-ish years ago, and also as well thanks to Runemaster being essentially the sorcerer rework that we've been waiting for. That means that we can play it on a Runemaster, since sorcerer gives us little to no benefits for anybody for most things, which means we can, update the build to modernity. Now, of course, if you haven't already, I'd heavily suggest leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel, as that is the best way of currently supporting the channel. You can also join me on my Twitch stream. There's a link down below. You can ask me questions about last Epoch and get some build help, of course, as well. Now, with all that being said, let's actually talk about the build, shall we? So, Lightning Blast Runemaster. So, Lightning Blast is kind of a weird skill. For most builds, we usually utilize Convergence, which is a node that makes so Lightning Blast chains multiple times on the same target, and that leads to Lightning Blast being one of the highest single target skills in the entire game, even after multiple nerfs and the devs trying to remove it from the game entirely by just nerfing it over and over and over again. Thankfully, even through all those nerfs, Lightning Blast has prevailed, which is great. But the normal version of Lightning Blast, where you try to play it with chains, definitely did not age well for a while there. Before the Runemaster patch, I'll be honest, Lightning Blast was kind of meh for just Lightning Blast chains, right? But thankfully, with the Runemaster patch, there was a lot of new things added to synergize with Lightning Blast, which has caused the build go up through the roof. Now, the first thing that has essentially brought this build from the grave is Frostwall. Frostwall has some nodes in it that allow it to shoot out 2 lightning blasts every few seconds, which means you can get even more lightning blast casts as you're casting lightning blasts, right? Then you combine that with static casting lightning blast, and you can get way more lightning blasts on a single target than you normally would be able to. And also as well, just plopping down a frost wall while you're clearing monoliths and watching enemies die to the lightning blast is very satisfying. So I was trying to play this build as it was like a static ball build with like the runic invocation, but the biggest problem was I just didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it. So we ended up just playing lightning blast instead. Turns out that does like way more damage. I actually swapped from the static ball like runic invocation, right? And I swapped into lightning blast, and my T4 Jurula kill went from 2 minutes and 10 seconds to 1 minute and 30 seconds, which is significantly better. By the way, if you don't know, that is really good, as that brings us into average build territory, which means the build is quote unquote viable. Another funny thing that happened was when I was playing this build, I started playing in my normal empowered monolith setup, and I ended up actually doing like 500 corruption, right? It was like 480 corruption with my build without even noticing. And I was wondering, like, hey, why is everything like surviving so much? And I was like, oh, yeah, it's because we're accidentally in 500 corruption without knowing about it. So today's footage has been recorded in around like 450 to 480 corruption, by the way. But yeah, Lightning Blast in general. Now, one of the biggest things that makes this build viable and actually function as a build is we're getting a very large amount of our increased damage from Lightning Blast itself. So right now we have well over like 600% increased damage as we're casting Lightning Blast on a singular target. That is because of the node that allows it to chain to yourself whenever you cast Lightning Blast. This gives us a large amount of percent crit on top of a decent amount of percent increased damage. This percent increased damage stacks infinitely, same thing with of course the crit chance, and for a few seconds, and it allows us to essentially build all our percent damage with this instead of having to put it on our gear. That definitely gives us a lot of benefits, as not having to focus too much of percent damage on our gear and percent crit on our gear means we can focus everything else on defenses, and that's exactly what we do. So the first thing for our defenses, of course, the stereotypical Twisted Heart. Twisted Heart just sacrifices a little bit of your HP, gives you as ward, and that is great with this Rai Blessing that gives you some spell damage, leeches life, right? That keeps us sustained while we're in the monoliths killing things. And the phenomenal idea that I had for this build was utilizing double static touches. So one of the problems with a build like this is we're utilizing a wand and a catalyst. A wand has around like 50 to 60 flat damage. Now you get some flat damage on the tree and stuff like that, but you definitely don't get that much, especially as a rune master. That means that we need to find other sources of flat damage. And thankfully, with the static touch rings, right, we can get a large amount of flat damage for free, right? We can get like up to like 26 flat lightning damage. That is like 20% more damage essentially in the end game setup. Like that is effectively that much damage. Now, we also, of course, get the benefit of the ward on shocked enemy. This brought our ward generation to extremes. Turns out when you take two really strong ward generation sources and you combine both of them, it turns out it makes the build a lot better. On like Durla and stuff, I'll reach like 10k ward or whatever, or like on a single target. It's really strong. It's really great. It's nice playing a self-cast build in a ARPG that doesn't feel awful. You know, I'm used to playing Path of Exile where self-cast is kind of meh, but playing a build like this in Last Epoch definitely makes it feel a lot better to be self-cast because we can stack well over like 300%, 200% cast speed, and it just feels buttery smooth when we're in the monolith and just casting our frost walls everywhere, casting our lightning blast. It feels great. Now, the last thing that I want to note is I tried my darndest to ignore all of the broken Runemaster things. So, like for instance, I did not go for the frost wall stuff inside, like the frost wall flame ward stuff, right? I didn't try to go for like most of the ward gen in Runemaster. I tried to not go too crazy with it. The most of my ward gen is coming from Twisted Heart and coming from Double Ring. The of course Runemaster is giving me a decent amount of ward gen, but if Runemaster was nerfed into the ground, I don't think this build would not exist, as the build itself has a solid enough foundation that even if Runemaster gets guttered, it shouldn't be too much of an issue to revive the build and keep it alive. Uh, I think that when they nerf Runemaster, they'll probably make sure that Runemaster actually still exists, right? Obviously. Now, I'll probably post a pinned comment whenever, you know, the new patch comes live and we can talk about if this build is still viable. Now, with all that being said, let's go in game and talk about the build in more detail, shall we? All right, so here we are in game with the character. We are just going to be going around the skills. So first things off, we take 4 points into Arcing Power, which gives us up to 4 maximum chains if we have directly cast Lightning Blast, you know, so we get 4 extra chains with our self-cast Lightning Blast. This does not count triggered casts. So like for instance, the Frostwall cast and the static cast do not give us actual extra chains. The main reason why we care about the extra chains from these two is for single target purposes. And then we also grab Surging Influence to make it so our chains go farther. This makes it so that the chains can come back to us quicker with Closed Circuit, which then improves the consistency of this node, and this node gives us a lot of increased damage. So I'm just going to sit here and cast it. As you can tell, we get a very large amount of increased damage here for free. It gives us a lot of extra damage for free, helps us out in terms of scaling damage significantly so, means that we don't have to scale it ourselves. It also helps us cap our critical strike chance. As you can tell, we don't have to invest into any more critical strike chance than we currently have, thankfully, because of this node. And we take 2 points travel into Crackling Speed, 3 points to Shatter Shock, just gives us a lot of more damage. We also grab 5 points in Front Loaded. This is really strong for single target, as the less damage per chain doesn't really matter to us when we're hitting a singular target, as it's just going to give us a lot of extra damage. Like a lot of upfront damage is really good for Lightning Blast Chain the way that we have it currently set up. This is the one advantage that we have over Convergence, right? Then we take 4 points in Overcharge for the double cast chance and free crit multi, then 1 point in Hypercharge. So now we have a quadruple chance as well. So we cast a bunch of extra Lightning Blasts. This is only if you're self-casting. It does not count, of course, a triggered cast, but that's fine. Then this also can give us even more chains, so it gives us even more increased damage. So double cast and stuff's really good. 1 point travel into Storm's Razor, although this node would be great if you had extra plus levels. Then 2 points to Lightning Attunement. The main reason why we like Lightning Attunement, not only does it give us some increased damage, it also makes it so that we take less damage, right? It also means that we can run stuff like cast speed while we have Lightning Aegis idols, which are insanely strong. That all combined is Lightning Blast Tree. So for Frostwall, the main things we care about, is charge pylons, right? And then grabbing the frequency over here so that whenever enemies move through the wall, we get more lightning blasts. And we also grab these nodes here, lightning rods, which make it so that pylon casts lightning blasts when enemies move through the frost wall, which is great. So like it kills melee enemies really easily. Then we also grab this node down here to give us a little bit of mana like bump when we're in like monos and stuff, so you don't have to like spend too much mana when we're in monos. Then of course as well we're grabbing the mana gen here when we walk through. It's like a few extra points, 5% more damage to chilled enemies. That's great, and grabbing all the more damage we can. Then 1 point into brand the invaders for brand. The main reason we want the brand is for the node here, Celestial Doom, so you get more spell damage to branded bosses, which will be great. And that's pretty much it for Frostwall. Uh, Flame Ward, stereotypical Flame Ward setup, nothing too different. Runic Invocation, we only care about using this as a traversal skill mainly, just using it as a teleport. We also get a decent cast speed bonus from this, and we also get a cast speed bonus from our tree as well. So we get cast speed here, and then we also get cast speed here. So it's like about like it's like 18% cast speed, some spell flat damage, which is great, right? Then we also grab this, which gives us some ward gain per Gone rune. We get like 36%, 36 ward per second, which isn't all that much, but it's just what we get for running a runic invocation. And we also get our mana gained as ward, get some mana refund here, mana gained as ward, then some area for the occasional ball lightning that we shoot out, right? So overall, uh, Runic Invocation's a meh thing. You could probably replace it with, of course, Teleport, but then it would be weird playing a Runemaster without Runic Invocation, right? So now the next note here, you have Static. Static, mainly we care about Overload, 5 points into Diode, then 1 point to Unlimited Power. This makes it so that when we're standing on top of a target, we can simply sit on top of them and then kill the boss, right? Which is great. We want to stand on top of them, get as many casts of lightning blast as possible on top of getting the lightning blast from Frostwall, so we sit on top of them. Right now, we do need a huge arcane idol with static charges gained per second. This will make it so that we can consistently cast one lightning blast per second, because with all the nodes, a lightning blast will cost 10 charge cost. So we want to have 10 charge cost per second so that we maintain it, so that we get an extra lightning blast per second. It's just extra free damage. Otherwise, like there isn't really much else to put in this slot here. That's pretty much it for the skills. We can talk about the passives that are important here. Mainly, get as much cast speed as possible, get as much word retention as possible. Cast speed here, crit chance for this since we're stacking intelligence. Getting some leech and lightning pen from here is great, right? Then for Runemaster, cast speed, getting a ward on direct cast as well as intelligence, right? The less damage taken, the 15% more damage against low health enemies is always good, right? Then the cast speed here. We also get the crit multi. This is a massive node, giving us a massive amount of crit multi. Now, of course, this will probably get nerfed in next patch, to be honest. We also have Decree of the Burning Wind. We can walk through our Frost Wall to get 16% more damage to bosses and rares. Lots of free damage. 8 points of Ancient Inscriptions to give us CD recovery for our traversal skill. 1 point to Rune Word Hurricane for spell lightning damage. Getting as much lightning flat damage as possible would be very preferable for us for the way we're currently setting it up. Then eventually 7 points out of Celestial Doom gives us a lot of ward gain while also giving us more damage to branded bosses, hence why we grab the brand. Then 5 points into Jagged Veil for the ward on crit. We don't actually care too much about the ward on crit. It's like okay, but we mainly care about the more crit against more crit, because we can easily get to the 200 like the 20% more crit multi, which is 20% more damage for this build. And that's pretty much it for the passives. Now we can talk about the items. So for items, there's no actual mandatory items for this build technically. You could start this very easily fresh with the current setup that Runemaster has, right? It would be very easy to start this at like level 50 and move on from there. But items that I would suggest having before playing the build, if you're not starting fresh, is like a Twisted Heart. You don't have to have a slammed one like I have. I just have a slammed one because I'm cool. So we have one with like physical resistance. This is not only a lot of a percent increased health, gives us +1 to lightning blast, while also allowing us to consume our HP to gain a bunch of ward. And then that's why we have leech to sustain this degen, right? Other items that we have are Invoker Static Touches. Mainly, it's for the spell lightning damage flat that gives us a lot of free damage, but also as well, we get the gigantic amount of ward from these two rings. Gives us a lot of free ward per second, which is great, right? Then we also grab Isidora's Tomb Binding. The main reason we're using this is not only does it have increased cast speed on it, but it also gives us a very large amount of flat armor and percent armor. That's really good when we're playing a ward build, as we want to stack as much armor as possible. So Isidora's ends up being a really good cheapo belt for us, right? Like we wouldn't want anything else, right? And that's pretty much it for the items that I would say that are necessary. Now let's talk about the exalted tier. So we have a Mystic Helm with +3 lightning blasts and suffixes that don't really matter. As long as you stay around like 1500 life, you'll have enough ward gen per second, right? 1500 life is like the sweet spot. You don't really need to go higher than that. So you can focus the rest of the affixes on, of course, uh, other stuff like resistances and stuff like that, right? Intelligence, the Mystic Helm base is really good because it helps us cap out our crit avoid, right? Amulet here. Mainly, we need Exalted Shred on hit, either on the gloves or the amulet, preferably the amulet, as it'd be easier to get. Crit multi. You can even go for lightning pen if you want, resistances, stuff like that. Chest here, lightning crit multi is the best, as we want as much crit multi as possible since we're capping it. I do have crit multi here. I don't think I necessarily need this crit multi, but it is there. You could go for like percent spell damage or something like that, or int for more ward retention. Uh, a wand here, cast speed, crit multi on a Dragonhorn base, very strong. Catalyst here, cast speed, crit multi, resistances on a Crystal Skull base for that juicy base crit chance. Gloves here, we're utilizing a pair of Crusader Gauntlets, but what we could do is run a pair of Frostbite Shackles with like cast speed on them or something like that, and then dunk some of the rings or something like that for like cold res on a bunch of different items if we wanted to sacrifice some HP and go for Frostbite Shackles. I just didn't have a Frostbite Shackles pair with like cast speed on them, but you could eventually farm one out and swap into it. That would give you a lot more consistent ward on bosses and stuff. Very easily abuse the Twisted Heart here. Also, of course, on the boots, just some HP, some movement speed, stuff like that. You definitely want to like move into like double movement speed boots for this kind of build. You don't necessarily need the stats on your boots. I would just take like a pair of boots with like double movement speed on them and like zoom in the monos, right? Then for idols, I do have double static charge gain so that we actually can apply lightning blast per second. Then we also fill it out with uh, large idols with cast speed while we have lightning aegis. Then the rest is just resistances. And that's pretty much it for the items. Now for blessings, spell leech is very important for this build. If you do not have spell leech, Twisted Heart won't be good. So make sure you have the spell leech before you swap over to Twisted Heart. Here, you'd eventually want like Lightning Shred. I don't have that, but you could get that. That would be even more damage. Crit Strike Avoidance here, 69%. Nice. Then we, of course, we have the armor flat here, then the armor percent here. And that's pretty much it for the blessings, and that's pretty much it for the character. With all that being said, this has been Dread. I'll have to go do something else. Bye.